Hi guys, this is a supplementary video for 5.4. I am recording this in my class and I opened the windows. My phone is now muted. You may hear time to time people talking in the background because people are outside of the building. I just opened the window, so sound is coming in. It seems like 5.4 is a little confusing, so I'm going to take that up again. So 5.4 is graphing and modeling with a sinusoidal function, meaning sine and cosine functions. So modeling here means that you have a graph and you come up with an equation that represents that periodic function, or you have a function, the equation, and then you basically graph just one segment, which actually is the one period of the whole periodic function. So let's then deal with the equation first. So if you have y equals, let's say, I don't know, 4 cosine and then 1 over 2 x minus 10 degrees plus 3, okay? So the very first thing that you have to do is you look at what kind of function you're dealing with. Is it sine or cosine? If it is a sine, then your graph will be like this, starting from the equation of the x's. If it is the cosine, then it will start from the maximum and then it goes down to the minimum, right? Obviously, if there is a negative in front of the whole function, that basically means that your function is now reflected along the x-axis like this. So it will be looking like that, or it will be looking like this. So that's the first thing that you have to decide. So in this case, it's the cosine. So we know that it's going to look like that, okay? Now, since we don't have negative sign in the front, we don't have to flip this. So that's the first thing, okay? The second thing, I will say equation of the x's. It's all different, okay? It could be 4, it's completely up to you, but I usually take the EOA as the first and draw the dotted line. So I know that this is y equals 3 line because it's a horizontal line. Now then the third thing is that we basically put the points. Remember the 5 points? So the points for the maximum, points for the minimum, and points for the equation of the axes intersection. So once you do that, then basically put the coordinates form. So order pair form like this. And then obviously the middle ones have the y value of 3 because it's intersecting with the y equals 3, which is the equation of the axes. Then we take a look at the amplitude. The amplitude is the third step, and in this case is the 4. That means from the equation of the axes, you go up by 4 and then you go down by 4. So from 3 we go up by 4, that's 7, and then from 3 we go down by 4, that's negative 1. So that's basically maximum and the minimum. And obviously another maximum will have a 7. Now then the fourth thing is to know where the starting point is. So then that will be the C. So in this case, it's a negative 10. And when it comes outside of the brackets, it's supposed to be the opposite sign. So we know that it starts from 10 degrees. Okay. Then the last part is my period. Okay. So then we have 1 over 2 as the k, right? 1 over 2 as the k. So my period, then 360 times 1 over k, meaning reciprocal of the k. So we basically flip the k, and that becomes 720 degrees. So this is your period. This basically means that this is the length of your one period of the periodic function. So from the starting point to the ending point, the length is 720. Therefore, the ending angle will be 730 because it's the 720 from the 10 degrees. So we have to add that 10 degrees to our period. If it was, let's say, negative 20, then obviously you just put negative 20, sorry, not negative 20, sorry, 720 plus negative 20, so that becomes 700. Now then the last step, which is the sixth step, is that you divide this period by 4, and that basically is the increase from one point to the next point. Remember the cosine graph and the sine graph, they are divided into 4 equal segments, right? So for example, in the cosine, you basically have this segment, this segment, this segment, and this segment. On the screen, it doesn't look the same, but they are the same length in terms of the x value, okay? Same thing with the sine as well. So if you look at the sine, equation of the axes, so 1, 1, 1, 1, and then 1. So 1 segment, 2, 3, and then 4, okay? So these two graphs share almost the same characteristics, so you don't have to memorize more. Then 720 divided by 4 is 180. That means from the starting point to the next point, it goes up by 180. So it's 190 now. And then from that point to the minimum point, it goes up by 180 again. So that is 370. And then the minimum to the EOA intersection point, again, go up by 180. So that is then 550, I believe. Is it? Or 650, sorry. So it is a 650. Is it? No, it's 550. I was right. So 550, okay? So from 370, and then we add 180 up. So it becomes 550. And then just to double check, if you add 550 and 180, it becomes 730. So we have done modeling, we have done graphing from the equation, okay? So that basically is the steps. So be really careful of following the steps, because as long as you follow the steps, it actually becomes very easy. If you just go whatever the number that you like to do, it becomes very messy and it becomes very tricky. It's easy to make mistakes, okay? Now then, let's take a look at how to find an equation from the graph. Basically, we're going backwards, okay? So let's say if you look at a graph, I don't know whether I can have a graph here, but let's say this case you're looking for an equation. So I have a graph going like that, and then okay. So my graph is not completely accurate, but I'm just going to tell you. So when you are coming up with the equation, it's basically y equals either sine or cosine. So it is a or sine or cosine, k, x minus c, and then plus d, right? So the very first thing is to find the maximums or the minimums, so that actually tells you a lot of stuff. So first thing is find the max and find the min. So in this case, let's say the maximum is at 9 and then minimum is at -3, okay? So I'm gonna just set it up this way. And this angle, let's say, is, well, not this angle, where are we? Okay, so let's say this angle, which is the maximum, is at -45 degrees, and this angle is, let's say, at I don't know, what should I put, 300, let's say, 300 and 700 and sure, let's put just a 250 degrees. I don't really care much. So the first thing is we just first have to find the maximum and minimum. Maximum is 9, minimum is -3. Okay, that's the first. And from this, we can find 3 informations. One is the A, another one is D, and the last one is the period. Okay, so A is, remember, it's max minus min divided by 2, so that is 9 minus -3 divided by 2. So that is 12 over 2, that's a 6. So my amplitude is a 6. Now D, which is my EOA, then is maximum plus minimum divided by 2. So that is 9 plus -3 over 2. That basically is a 6 over 2, that is 3, okay? Now the period is, then we have to look at the angles where those two maximums are. If you cannot spot maximums, you can spot minimums too, okay? So in this case, we have from -45 degrees to 250, so larger angle minus the smaller angle. That basically gives you the length, right? So this becomes then 295 degrees. Are you okay? Now, we're almost done actually. Then we have found the A, we have found the D. Now, then it is your job to determine. If the question is asking you to find the cosine equation, then you basically choose any maximum point and read their angles. So in this case, we already have chosen this maximum at -45 degrees. So we can say C is -45. So we know that A is a 6, D is 3, C is negative 45 because we chose this angle to be the starting point. Why? That's the maximum angle that gives the maximum, well, that's the angle that gives the maximum y value for the periodic function here. And let's say we're choosing cosine graph, okay? So let's say in this case we're choosing cosine graph, or the question is asking you to find the cosine graph. Now, then the last one is the k. So how do I find the k? A k is basically period, so 295 times 1 over, 360, my bad. 360 times 1 over period. So it's the 360 times 1 over period that gives you the k. And the reason is very simple, because remember k was, well, the period was 360 times 1 over k, right? So if you rearrange this equation, then it becomes k equals 360 times 1 over p, okay? So that's where that, this thing comes from, okay? So then you do the calculation of this, leave it in a fraction, so it is 360 over 295. Well, obviously you have to simplify. I am not going to simplify here, just a supplementary video. So on the test or the quiz, you have to simplify this. So then we have found the k. So your cosine equation then here is a 6 cos 360 over 295, x minus negative 45, so that's x plus 45 plus 3. So we have the cosine equation of that periodic function. Now then, how do I find the sine? Well, the sine, as you remember, sine is basically where the graph intersects with the EOA, or it basically is shift of the 1/4 of your period. So remember this, from sine to cosine and cosine to sine, you have to remember which way that you have to move. As long as you follow that, and then you should be okay. So hopefully this video is helpful for you to understand how to graph and how to come up with an equation from it, okay? And let me know what kind of questions you have more, okay? Okay, bye guys.